Good afternoon, and thank you for joining United Way's National Volunteer Month event, Mentor United. This is part of a Learn United series designed to highlight the narratives of a variety of voices in our community. My name is Brandy Davis, Senior Manager of Volunteer United. And today we will discuss the increased need for mentors for children of all ages, as well as different ways volunteers can support our community's youth. Throughout this conversation, if you have questions or comments for our panelists, please put them in the chat box. So, without further ado, I'd like to briefly introduce our expert panel. Today we have joining us Chanie Scott, AVP of Outreach and Recruitment for Big Brothers Big Sisters Central Ohio, and Elizabeth Crabtree, Director of Volunteers in Child Enrichment of Franklin County Children's Services. And so, to get us started, I'd like to ask both of you to share a little bit about your background, education, and what led you to where you are today. Chanie, do you mind kicking us off?
Absolutely. So hi, everybody out there. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Chanie Scott, as Brandy mentioned, and I have been working in the youth advocacy field for several years. I started out, I went to Ohio State. I'll go back even a little further. So go Bucks. Went to the Ohio State University and graduated with a human development and family science degree, and absolutely just fell in love with being able to look at youth in different stages of their life, and also being able to be trauma informed and really understand the need for advocacy and the need for mentorship that our youth have. So I started out there, ended up at Directions for Youth and Families. Big shout out to my family there. Went to United Way for a minute of time with Action for Children. And then also worked at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. And there I was able just to connect with the city on a huge level. I worked at the Livingston Library, which is now Barnett Library, which I always told them it should be. And now it's Barnett Library because there's two libraries on Livingston. And then went to Martin Luther King Library. So just really enjoyed working with the youth, being able to help families and being able to serve our Central Ohio community. And then now I'm at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio, and we serve Delaware, Union, Franklin counties, and we also help out Springfield as well. So just being able to really match kids every single day who need it in our community. But that's a little bit of my background. Elizabeth?
Thank you. And I loved hearing more about you and getting to know you better. That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So my name is Elizabeth Crabtree. I'm very excited to be here. And my path was a little bit different. I started out at Muskingum. That's where I got my undergrad, and my focus was on research. So I loved experimental psychology. I had the opportunity to do some traveling when I was in college and decided that I wanted to spend a year volunteering. So much to my family's shock, I moved to South America for a period of time and worked in a kindergarten and had some really life-changing experiences there. I went thinking that I was going to help, and I'm sure that I did on some level, but I got back way more than I gave. And working with the kids there and the families and the way they embraced this other person who came in to teach English was transformative. So when I came back home, I ended up in child welfare, and I was going to do it for 5 years. That was my plan. And I fell in love with the agency. And so I've been at Franklin County Children's Services now for almost 19 years. And I started out in intake, and then I worked off shift when I got my master's in social work, and then supervised for a little while until I got this position, which I always tell people I have the best job in the world. And I'm sure my other panelists will maybe disagree with me on that. She might believe she has the best job in the world, and maybe we both do. But I get to oversee our mentoring program, and we are one of just a few child welfare agencies in the nation that has a mentoring program in-house. And then I also get to run our Holiday Wish program and all of our donations. And that is just the generosity of our community and the beauty of the people that live in Central Ohio just continues to humble me. And so that's just in a nutshell how I ended up where I am today. And sometimes I just feel very fortunate and blessed to be where I'm at.
Thank you both for sharing. I thoroughly enjoyed learning a little bit more about kind of your background and how you got to where you are now. And so one thing I do want to highlight, I think most of us in the community are somewhat familiar with Big Brothers Big Sisters and Franklin County Children's Services, but do you both mind sharing a little bit about the mission of your organization and who you serve?
Yeah, sure, I can go. So our mission is really just to create and support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of our youth. So we have a lot of youth who are dealing with different lived experiences. Those could be traumatic. Those could be just going down a different path than they really should be. And, you know, they may have lost a loved one. They may have a parent who is incarcerated. They may be, you know, getting initiated into a gang, and that's because they're feeling like they don't have anywhere else to go, like they don't have anywhere else to turn. And so our mission is really to connect those youth who are going through any of those lived experiences with a positive mentor, with an advocate, a sounding board for them that is going to be there and consistently show them that they are loved and that they are supported. You know, suicide is really the second leading cause of death for children, well, youth ages 10 to 24. And suicide is that point in your life when you feel like you have nothing to lose, when you feel like you have no one in your corner. And Big Brothers Big Sisters and all of the mentoring agencies here in Central Ohio are doing exactly that. We are providing these children and these youth and these families with someone who is going to be authentic, who's going to be genuine, who's going to really invest all of their time into this young person with no stake in them. We specifically are putting matches together that they would have probably never met each other, seen each other, known each other otherwise. And to me, being able to build that diversity of education of different ethnicities, you know, different cultures, different values even, I think is so extremely important for you to be a well-rounded individual. And that is exactly what mentorship does. And so that's our mission. I'll stop because I could talk all day. So that's our mission.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know, when you kind of shared a little bit about how, you know, the pandemic and just the current circumstances are affecting some of the youth in our community, that was very sobering. So I appreciate you sharing that. Elizabeth, could you share as well?
Yeah, so our mission at the agency is to ensure the safety, permanency, and well-being of the community's youth in a way that honors culture and values families. What does that mean? So when it comes specifically to children's services, we show up when a family's in crisis, and usually that crisis involves some sort of safety issue that we are out to help collaborate with the family to address. So when it comes to our mentoring program in particular, our mentoring department focuses on serving youth that are involved with Franklin County Children's Services. Our top priority is matching youth who are in paid placement. That would be residential treatment facility if their behaviors have escalated to the point that they need that extra support, or they're living with grandparents and a kinship type placement or family members. But specifically, our department and our mission of our department is to serve and build relationships between caring adults and those youth, and also with their families, because the families, and we always tell people, if a child, even if it's in paid placement, like a foster home or residential treatment facility, 9 out of 10 of them do return home. And we want to make sure that our mentors are working with that particular youth, but also supporting the entire family. And the family is supporting that mentor back in those relationships. So specifically, that's what our department does. But within child welfare and our agency's mission, it is to ensure safety first, but then also ensure that we are working with families to help address any concerns that they have within their home.
Thank you both for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So of course, we're here to talk today specifically about mentorship. And so my question to both of you is, why mentorship? Why is it important for folks to mentor?
So I can start on this one if that's okay. Why is it important for people to mentor? There is no person that I have ever met who has hit a place in their life where they feel like they are where they want to be that hasn't had caring individuals who've influenced them in their lives. We know that relationships are incredibly therapeutic. We know they're incredibly healing. And we also know that we were designed to live in relationships with other people. And so the importance of mentoring, it's breathing into somebody, them breathing back into you, and working together to be the best forms of ourselves. And I will say, I have never met a mentor in our department that hasn't come back and said, I know that I gave a lot, but I feel like I got more than I gave. Our kids are amazing. Our kids are incredibly resilient. Now, they might sometimes make choices that we wish they would have made a different choice or gone a different direction. But our kids have so much to offer. They oftentimes just need a caring adult in their lives to help them see the true value they carry within themselves. One of the things that we do say in our department is that all of our youth need a hero, and our mentors can bring out the hero they carry within. And that's really why mentorship is so important, as we help hold up a mirror to our youth and show them the value that they carry and the potential for who they can be.
Thank you for sharing. I love that mindset of not only are the mentees having such an enriching experience, but those who choose to mentor are really getting a lot out of it as well. So thank you. Chanie?
Yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing that. We certainly feel the same way at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And what we also say is that mentors are there to defend or ignite the potential in youth, because potential can be lying dormant, right? If you don't have someone to show you a different perspective or a different avenue, then you're only going to be what you see, and you can't be what you can't see, right? So having a mentor who can show you different ways to approach life, different ways to think about, whether you're going to college or whether you're going to go to HVAC school or be a beautician or what have you, is extremely important. And mentoring ultimately connects a young person to personal growth, development, social and economic opportunity, which is what the world needs, the nation needs right now. And I'm a research person. I like to read. I like research. And so I'm going to give you a couple statistics from our mentoring effect study. We have a partnership with Mentor Central Ohio, and they actually help build up mentoring organizations throughout Ohio. And they're actually a national organization. So just as we are a national organization, so is Mentor Central Ohio. And they did a research study called the Mentoring Effect. And what they found is that youth are 55% more likely to enroll in college with a mentor, 52% less likely than their peers to skip a day of school. That's important. 130% more likely to hold a leadership position or join a club or a sports team. And then lastly, 90% of at-risk youth reported being interested in being a mentor themselves. So it's that ripple effect that we need. We need to make sure that we are investing in our youth right now. There are, children dying. There are children who are depressed. There are children who are being diagnosed with mental health disorders on a daily basis. 1 in 5 children are going to be diagnosed with some kind of mental health disorder. We need advocacy, and we need that to come from passionate people here in Central Ohio who are willing just to say, hey, you know what? I have time. I'm going to invest in a young person. I know one of the big things that I hear is that I don't have experience with kids, because we have a lot of 20, 21, 22-year-olds coming in who want to be a mentor, who are absolutely fantastic. And they say they don't have experience with kids. And I'm like, weren't you a kid? Don't you remember how that was? Just really think about what you needed as a child and as a youth, and think about who gave you, like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, who gave you a hand up in life, right? who was there to really pull you up and say, hey, let's try this way. Or, I think you're going off kilter a little bit. Let's think about some different opportunities for you, because I know how valuable you are to our society. And I want to help you be a well-rounded member of society. So mentorship is important for all of those reasons. And also just to make sure that we're helping youth find their voice, I will say, is the last one.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate you sharing some of those statistics with us. Before I ask my next question, I just want to highlight once again that if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts that are spurred by the conversation that we're having right now, please feel free to post those questions in our chat box. So with that being said, you talked a little bit about why mentorship is important. Could either of you, both of you, speak to the current need for mentorship and what does that look like for your respective organizations?
Brandy, I will say that we do have a question in the chat that we can get to after the question you just asked, and I'm excited about the question in the chat. But the current need, I will say, for our agency, we are still with the pandemic, and I know that it's not just us still feeling out where we're at. We have some families that are ready for their children to be matched with mentors, and they're ready for them to have contact out in the community. We also have children who are in homes with people who still have some high risk factors. And so that would be more of a virtual contact. When it comes to the need for mentors, yes, we need people who are ready to commit to working with a youth. And this kind of goes back to the question in the chat. We need people who are in a space where their life is calmed down enough, and you don't have to be perfect, you have to be present. I will say that. There is no time we're going to be like, this is the perfect time for me to do, right? Because there will always be something. There will always be a change. There'll always be that piece. But we ask that you look at your calendar and you know that you have space for a relationship. You have space to intentionally spend time with a child. You are in a position where you can focus on that. And that we don't have anything coming up in the next 6 months or to a year that might cause that relationship to end early. We have people who come in and want to mentor and then say, well, I'm looking though when I graduate, moving out of state, or I'm looking at this promotion that might make me move out of state. And one of the things we tell our adults is that our kids have had, especially in child welfare, a lot of disrupted relationships in their lives. And if you're going to come and spend time with one of our youth, we know that if that relationship terminates early and it doesn't terminate in a way or ends in a way that doesn't bring healthy closure to that relationship, you've done more harm than good. And I always tell people, if you think about a friendship you had that didn't end well, how do you think back on that entire relationship? You don't look back favorably, you look at how it ended. And so that's one thing that we do ask is make sure that you're in a place in your life that you can commit to at least a year. We'd like to, but at least a year to working with that young person. And that when the time comes, you're in a space to then also handle that transition in a way that you are mentoring the child through the change. So we've got kids that need mentors. We do need adults that are ready to build relationships and have the space, time, and capacity to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth. Ditto to all of that. I definitely will put a number to ours. So, we're a national organization. Nationally, we have 30,000 kids on our wait list between the about 250 affiliates of Big Brothers Big Sisters. And that just hurts my heart because obviously I oversee enrollment or outreach and recruitment. So that's my job, to find those bigs that are willing to come and to serve and to mentor. And here in Central Ohio, we have about 500 or so kids on our wait list. And in that wait list, that's growing every day, by the way. That number fluctuates because we have so many families who know that Big Brothers Big Sisters is a reputable, wonderful organization that's going to make sure that they're safe, and that child safety is our number one priority. That's going to make sure that they're trained, that they're taken care of. All of that, families feel that. And so we have families connecting with us daily. But we don't have the volunteers. We don't have the bigs that are connecting with us daily. And we need to make sure that the need is out there. I think that's one thing that in my role as a youth advocate for all of these years, that's one thing that I've learned is that just access to education. Knowing that this opportunity is out there is the biggest plight that I have seen. And me covering ground in Central Ohio, trying to talk to everybody about the opportunity is really hard. So we definitely need mentors. Obviously, there are families who want mentors, and we're also looking for diverse mentors. So, you know, I would say about 70% of our kids on our wait list are African American, and about 67% of the kids of the bigs that are in our program are white. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. As I mentioned before, we want to celebrate differences. And I always say that it just causes for a pause in relatability. But there's also those families who, going back to you can't be what you can't see, there's also those families who want that for their child. And we want to honor that. So it's my job to go out there and find as many bigs, white, black, green, blue, yellow, that would be coming into our organization to give their time and their heart and their passion to a child. So that's where we are. The need is there. The need is great.
Thank you for sharing that. 500, that's big, but I think we can do it, Columbus, so that's a challenge. The other thing I want,
I'm so sorry. If I could just, and you brought up a really a good point that we have a lot of kids and a lot of families seeking out mentors. One of the things that we are finding in the research is that families are oftentimes more comfortable seeking a mentor for their youth than they are other resources, especially therapeutic resources. And we know these relationships can be therapeutic. And I'm sure that Big Brothers Big Sisters has seen an increase in requesting mentors in part because of that too. And I think that really speaks to the importance and the value that families put on mentoring relationships and why they are so vital in our community.
thank you for sharing that. I do want to just follow up. Are there any other specific expectations that you're looking for when, you know, if someone's thinking about becoming a mentor? Is there something that they need to know or expectations that you're looking for when they come in?
I can answer that, and it actually goes a little bit to one of the questions in the chat, but for us, we want you to be 21, driver's license, we do background checks. There are laws when it comes to working with youth, and we follow those as well as some state mandates because we're a child welfare agency, so there's a little bit that we have to follow in regards to that. So there's obviously the assessment that we do. We sit down and talk to you for, it depends on who talks to you, at least in our department. I have one person, it'll be 2 hours. I have another person, it'll only be an hour. And you know, we do an orientation to talk about at least our agency and what we do, but then we have training specifically for our mentors. When it comes to implicit bias, and I love that question came up. One of the things we do talk about in our assessment is we start from the beginning of like, talk to us about not necessarily implicit bias, but moments that you've had where racism has entered a conversation, or you have seen some conflict in that area, and how have you addressed it? And so we start from the beginning with talking about those things in our assessments to kind of see where you are at as a mentor. We have 2 Afrocentric programs, Simba and Malika, that specifically it's African-American men who work with boys and African-American women who work with girls, but we also have African-American youth in our college-bound mentoring program and our friendship program as well. And those are our 2 other specific programs. But we talk about that from the beginning because it's very important. We work with diverse families, and we work with families who are diverse within themselves. And so you might have a sibling who is biracial and in Simba and Malika, and then the other siblings are in friendship. And it's important that all those mentors are in a space to mentor those youth. So the training that we have done some training with our mentors regarding implicit bias. A lot of that is with the coordinators and making sure that they are in a space to coach our volunteers and our mentors on working with our youth, assess out when we might need a little bit more education and training, and what we can do to grow as individuals, because it is a lifelong journey for all of us to be in a space where we are really honoring each other and who each individual person is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elizabeth, we'll have to talk because there's a lot of collaboration that we can do. I am a huge believer in collective impact. I don't think that we can continue to work in silos and do this work by ourselves, carry all of these resources and really try to make the best possible program possible without any help, without us being able to collaborate and to work together. And with Mentor Central Ohio, that's exactly what they do. They offer training, they offer consulting. We do training on social and emotional learning, which is learning about yourself, who you are, who you want to be. And there's so much more into that. I won't go into that, but social and emotional learning, implicit bias, understanding your implicit bias, self-care, the makings of a mentor, relationship building. So giving you all of the tools that you need in your tool belt before you become a mentor, and then ongoing as well. So you do a prerequisite training with us. The first thing is an orientation. It's an online webinar hosted by me. Come see me. Hi, I host it once a month. And then we also have a training after that and an interview. We do your background check, your references. We just really want to get a holistic picture of who you are so that we can make a match that's going to be sustainable. We have to make sure that our kids, as Elizabeth mentioned before, are not having more harm done to them than before we got into the picture. So we want to make sure that we're making an absolutely fantastic match. Our average match length is about 3 years. So I will say our enrollment team is doing a beautiful job at that. Because if we weren't, it would be about 6 months, 7 months, and the mentor would be like, okay, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. But we have, most of our bigs are staying in there for at least 3 years. And so you have to be 18 to do our school-based community or school-based program. You have to be 21 to do our community-based program. And then just make sure that you're signing up for orientation, training, and an interview. And we follow you all through all of those steps. So we'll guide you, but those are our expectations and commitments.
Thank you both for sharing. So I think you both spoke to the question around implicit bias training and what kind of training is offered to mentors. I do want to follow up with the second part of that question. Have you had any issues with stereotyping?
I can start with that, and the answer would be yes. We've had spaces, I would say, opportunities for growth, as we like to call it in our department, with working with individuals. And that's something that we talk a lot about in our department is how do we stand watch, how do we keep guard, and how do we make sure that we are catching it when it happens and addressing it in the point in time. And when we don't, how do we then double back and have those hard conversations that need to occur? And it's all about doing what we can in the spaces that we are in. The other thing that I will say, there are so many wonderful resources out there, and Mentor of Central Ohio is fantastic and they do a lot. There are a lot of, and I will say we've learned a lot about what's out there nationally because we've been home, which sounds ironic when you say it, but if you have not ever looked at Embrace Races webinars and their website, I absolutely adore them. I was attending their stuff before we all were in the virtual space, and now, of course, they've just gotten huge. They have a lot of wonderful webinars that we send out to our mentors, because I always think, why reinvent the wheel if somebody else is doing it great? But I would encourage anybody on this to look at their website and look at just the information they have, because I have taken away a lot as an individual, and we've also been able to share a lot with our mentors from them. Oh, and their link is up. Thank you so much, United Way. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brandy, were you going to say something?
I was just being grateful for that wonderful response and looking forward to hear what you have to say about that as well.
Yeah, so our bigs all go through a number of different trainings. And the first training is making of a mentor, relationship building. And what we really want to make sure that our bigs know about is you're able to really promote yourself when you're becoming a mentor. You can build up your own communication skills, especially if you're working with a middle schooler. You can build up your communication skills, build up your, just your own moral values and your beliefs, and really tying into implicit bias and figuring out, who am I? What environment did I grow up in? Who is my family? What's my background? Because you have to be confident within yourself to be able to help someone else and really be able to see where they're coming from as well, and celebrating that. The number one characteristic that our littles want, we've surveyed them, is to have a non-judgmental big. That's the number one characteristic that they want. I would never think that. There's so many other, I would think it would be in there, but I didn't think that it would be number one. So really assessing the youth voice and knowing what they want is what we try to do on a continuous basis. But that implicit bias and seeing anyone who has done anything stereotypical, we actually had we do a training, and it's called Understanding Implicit Bias. And in that training, it's on Zoom. So the bigs are able to network and connect and really talk to one another. And right after the murder of George Floyd, we had one that was planned, and we were like, should we have it? What are we going to say? Are we prepared for what people are feeling? And I am so grateful to the team for continuing on and doing it, because we can't stop. We have to keep moving, and we have to keep moving in the right direction. And so conversations are so extremely important. Education is so extremely important. A lack of education in diversity or awareness or of who you are is going to be so hard for you to really grasp what's happening. So, and be able to talk to a youth about it. So in that training, they were able to just network, connect with one another. And you did hear of some stories where, some of our white bigs were saying, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I have the capacity to really help my little through this terrible, terrible, traumatic time for the nation. And so, we gave them resources and all of that, and that's all written word, right? So the other thing that we did that night was really just pour into them and let them know that, hey, everybody has implicit bias, literally. Everybody has it. It's unconscious. It's not, you can't walk into a room and not maybe go to people who look like you, right? If you're at a party or something, you're more than likely going to go step to people who look like you than you would someone who doesn't. And that is just unconscious. It's what we do as a human nature, as a human body. So we wanted to really validate that it's okay that you have these feelings. What is important is that you educate yourself. When you know better, you do better. So if we can do that for anybody here in Central Ohio, then we absolutely want to do that.
Thank you both for sharing that. I know that you both spoke to kind of the minimum age for someone who's looking to be a mentor, but it looks like we have a question around, is there a limit? Is there an age limit or a cap to someone who's looking to mentor?
I always say, if I can unmute, I always say you can be 100 and we will love you, and we'll hold your cane, we'll take you, we'll get you guys on the bus. We will figure out how to get you engaged and how to get you involved with us. So no, there is no limit.
I appreciate that response. I'm going to say ditto. And, and we're working with people, we're working with individuals. And so where we talk about minimums, it really just comes down to where you're at in life. And I think the piece about the importance of the match fitting is also important too. So yeah, we don't have a maximum.
Thank you for sharing that. So I do want to highlight, I know that many of us, especially those working in the nonprofit space over the last year and change, right, have experienced so much. We've had to be very flexible and kind of change the way that we work. And we're kind of working all under this new normal in response to everything that's happening around the world. And so my question to both of you are, how has your mentorship program or just the way that you're working with mentors changed to adapt to our new virtual environment and to what's happening within the pandemic?
Yeah, so I can go, Elizabeth. We have really had to, the buzzword pivot, many times in many spaces. And I mean, that just sums up 2020 so well, pivot. But we've had to transition our school-based program, which was in the school once a week for about an hour with your little, on the same day and time. So obviously, back in March, we shut down and we had to transition our whole program onto an online platform. So big shout out to Life Sports, to OSU, Rebecca, hello, we love you, thank you. They did an amazing program in the summer, that previous summer, that was virtual. And so we reached out to the team there and they helped us get on Genial. And so we are able to put all of our curriculum, all of our activities and make Google Classrooms, all kinds of really cool, amazing things that we never would have thought of doing, that we were able to really be creative and innovative with. And so our match support specialists to facilitate those school-based programs, so they're there with you, you get on Zoom, you guys are all in a group, and then they put you in breakout rooms with your little. So we had to be creative and figure something out because we know that keeping kids connected, that's the bottom line. So however we could do that, we were going to make that happen. With our community-based program, that was a little bit more difficult and tedious, right? We have waivers, we have forms that they have to sign if they want to see each other in person for both the family and the big. Not if they want, we know they want to, but if they're comfortable in doing so. So a lot of waivers, a lot of FaceTime, Google, Zoom, by any means necessary, texting. We had to be really lenient with the way that bigs were connecting with their littles because, like I said, just keeping them connected was what was most important and most valuable during such an isolated time. So the school-based program, I think, was our biggest transition.
That was a lot. I have so much respect for all that you all put together with the school-based program. So thank you for sharing that. And I will say that I can't imagine. So kudos to you all for doing that. Similar for us, so one of our volunteer programs, and I realize I never went over the different types that we have, but we do have a program called Crisis Volunteers, and those are our volunteers that work down at our intake and investigation office. And so when we have kiddos that are brought in, when the family's in crisis, they would work, help feed those kids, take care of those kids. So that center was shut down during the pandemic. So our crisis volunteers had to be put on hold, and that was incredibly challenging. As a former intake worker, I know how critical those volunteers are when you are having a rough night and a person with all this energy and just freshness comes in. It's such a support. So that was hard for us. And so that was one program that we had to just say now is not the time, and we will bring this back when the time is right. For community-based, yeah, lots of waivers, lots of discussions. We moved to virtual, and there was a lot of coaching, and some of that coaching actually came mentor to mentor. And I realized I want to go back to that with the implicit bias piece, or working with our families. Is there have been times where we've had mentors match up with other mentors to help coach them through that process, because who better to educate our mentors at times than the people who are walking the walk at the time. So we've had town halls with volunteers who are able to pivot well, talking to the volunteers who are struggling with the pivot. Because when you connect on a screen, like right now, I don't know who's in our audience. And so when I answer questions and then I want to change what I'm saying to match the audience, I don't know the audience. And so that's challenging. And And so you all know, and we all have experienced this together as a county and a state and a nation and a globe, as a world, that we've had to change how we connect. And so we've done it over lots of things. Our kids have done it probably more adaptedly than we have, because yes, because kids are amazing and they're resilient. And sometimes I run to catch up with them. And so that's just the world that we've had to move to. And I will say one of the positives is that the schools did get Chromebooks out to kids. And so then our mentors have been able to connect more with kids because there's been more technology in the home, because there's been a little bit more support. Not enough, and not what it should be, not so that there's equity in homes. And I worry a lot about, and I know I'm not alone in worrying, everyone on this panel will agree with me. I worry about the great divide that has occurred because of it. There was already a gap. The gap has gotten bigger and more pronounced. So just, it has been sometimes one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, and really supporting these connections to happen, because we know that relationships, as I've said, are healing. Connection is critical for all of us, but especially for our youth, and helping everybody kind of navigate this together.
Thank you for sharing that. And so I think, after this robust conversation, I'm sure the question on everyone who's tuned in right now in their mind is, how do I get involved? How do I become a mentor?
Call me 614-843. Call me, text me, come by. No, seriously, you have a lot of opportunity here in Central Ohio to become a mentor, to become a person who can be a sounding board for someone else. And I truly, truly want to give accolades and kudos to Franklin County Children's Services for the traumatic work that you guys do on a daily basis for our families here in Central Ohio or in Franklin County. And the way that you can get involved with us is going to Volunteer United. We're on Volunteer United. All of our volunteer opportunities are there. And we have an ongoing webinar orientation link. So that will always be on Volunteer United. So you can go to their website and click on us and become a super fan and share our events out and all of that. But there's an orientation that you just register for, and it's on GoToWebinar. So just make sure you have that capability. It's pretty user friendly. So I hope that all of you will think about mentoring as a necessity. It's not something nice to have, it's urgent. The need is urgent. We have got to get into these kids' lives now. We've got to invest in them now and be able to stick with them as long as we can. I always say any piece of time that you can give someone else is imperative and could make an impact. And you may not see the fruits of your labor while you're with them, but you will eventually see them grow into a wonderful person who's taken into account some of the things that you've said. So please come hang out with me at an orientation. You can get to our link at Volunteer United or Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio's website as well.
For us, we are also on with Franklin County Children's Services, and thank you so much. And we love Big Brothers Big Sisters, and you guys are just such a hallmark of quality mentoring and just an amazing, not only national, but your program, your local program is amazing and has incredible leadership. So for us, you can visit our website. We are on the Live United volunteer page. What I will encourage, though, each person listening to us is to spend some time thinking about where you are And if you're not in a position right now to mentor a youth, but you would like to work with another adult, there are lots of mentoring organizations out there that might be a good fit for you that maybe Franklin County Children's Services is not right now. I have a good friend who runs the mentoring program at POEM, and they work with mothers who've just had babies and are experiencing possibly some postpartum depression and want someone to talk to that's another mom that's gone through something like that before. So Mentor of Central Ohio is amazing. You can also look at their website to see other mentoring programs in the area to see what might be a good fit for you. We would love to have you join us. Big Brothers Big Sisters would love to have you join them. And we really want what would be a good fit for you as an individual, because we're all unique people. And what I will share, and it kind of goes back to, you don't know the impact that you have at the time. I mentioned earlier that I have the opportunity to run and the privilege to run our Holiday Wish program. And part of that is for our emergency cases. So these cases come to the attention of our agency close to the end of December, get gifts in red bags. And I had a donor come in one day, and this guy was dropping off gifts, and he put the toys down on the table and looked at me for a second and said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "I'm good, how are you?" And he looked up and he said, "Those red bags used to come for me. And that's why I donate year after year after year." And when those red bags were put together for him 20, 30 years ago, the volunteer didn't know the impact that they would have. The donor didn't know the impact that they had, that one-time donation, that one-time offering has had a lifelong impact on this individual. So regardless of what you do from here, and regardless of what you do when the screen shuts down, you will have an opportunity every day to make an impact in the life of another, and just believe that what you do today will have an impact on them down the road. So that's how I would close.
Thank you. And I did see that we do have one last and final question, so you're both welcome to answer. What does a typical, whether that's in-person or virtual, visit with a mentee look like?
Yeah, I just saw that. I love that question, because you want to know what you're getting into, right? So I would say that one thing to keep in mind with I'll start with community-based. So one thing to keep in mind with community-based is that it's about the time. Like Elizabeth mentioned, you don't have to be perfect, just be present. Just take them grocery shopping, go grocery shopping, do something that you have to do, go for a walk, nothing too impressive, because at Big Brothers Big Sisters, we get a lot of really cool opportunities. Well, pre-COVID, you could go to the Blue Jackets, you could go to the Columbus Museum of Art, you could go to the zoo, all of these wonderful partnerships that we have. But we always said, like, do those on a match anniversary. If you guys have been together for a year or 2 years, take them out to something really cool like that. But the everyday, just pick them up, go to the park, go to the library, but make sure that you're finding out what they like to do. If they like art, definitely go to the Columbus Museum of Art. If they're into gallery hops, go down to the Short North and just walk around and talk. If they're into books or literature, go to the Columbus Metropolitan Library and just hang out. I believe it's open now, and you can come in and sit and read or talk with one another. So the typical time is maybe 2 hours in the community-based program. You're picking them up, taking them out. I know my little Chanie, yay, hey, yay, we eat. So we go to any new restaurant, any new place, we're going to go eat and hang out for 2 hours. And I have 4 boys, so I don't know what it's like to have a girl. So this is my girl, and I love her dearly, and she talks the entire time. So I'm like, this is cool, because when I'm at home, it's either quiet or it's wrestling or it's a ball, or it's someone just laying all over me, just talking, wanting to talk my ear off too. So I'm glad to have a girl that I can relate to, and she's wonderful. So just like I said, be cognizant of what you're doing and make sure that you start small. Start small so that the expectation is not too big on you every time that you guys meet. And in the school-based program, I'll just briefly say that is on that platform that I mentioned. So it's on Zoom. but we have all of our activities are rooted in social and emotional learning. So learning about yourself, learning about, what you expect of others, and we bring out activities that are going to organically bring that conversation about, if that makes sense. So it's really easier to see it, but for me to explain it, that's the best way I can explain it. And we offer those every week when you guys get on Zoom. However, if you see that your little is just wanting to talk, or if they have a lot on their mind and they don't want to do an activity, we do not mandate any of that. We just want to make sure that you have a structured setting if you need it. And other than that, you have all of the space and opportunity to do Uno, Kahoot, and just hang out with each other. Uno is virtual. Did you guys know this? Yes, there is a virtual Uno. Brandy, you need to know this. And it's wonderful and fun. And I just never would have thought it. So there is so many creative games that are online now, so many resources. So you have a lot of options in the school-based program just to hang out for about an hour virtually. But that's what I would say a typical day looks like.
So for our community-based program, if I will put it that way, for our one-on-one matches, it looks very similar. And we do talk a lot about things that you can do with, so if you're physically getting together, things that you can do with your youth that are help with regulation, because we know that when kids are breathing and they're regulated, they're more open to talking and starting to build that relationship. One of the things that you learn as a caseworker from the beginning is the moment that you're transporting somebody in the car, that's when all the information comes out, because you're moving together, you're riding together, and there's just kind of a sense of connection when you do that. So we have loads of tips that we give you and different ideas that we can give you to spend time with your youth. And we really want it to be youth driven and to give them some decision-making in what's done and how it's done. But we also really encourage our mentors to spend time with their youth in their own communities and building up relationships in their own communities with resources and organizations that they have there, because we know that the stronger that web of connectivity a youth has and that sense of belonging where they live, the greater their sense of well-being and the greater their resiliency. And so that's something that we definitely encourage. When it comes to virtual, and I love that Uno came up because that's a favorite in our house. There are lots of virtual things that you can do online with a youth. It can feel clunky at times, and it can feel like you have to be more planful, and you do. But there's lots of coaching and lots of mentoring for the mentor that can happen in that space.
Thank you both for sharing that. And I must say, Chanie, virtual Uno, there's a good chance that I'll be suggesting that for our next virtual staff meeting or virtual gathering at United Way. So I'd like to close by just thanking everyone who tuned in and joined us this afternoon. I want to thank, of course, our panelists for your insights and just all the work that you're both doing in our community. We hope that this conversation today has encouraged you to explore more of the opportunities within Central Ohio to get involved. And so for more information on how you can sign up to mentor or volunteer in our community, please visit volunteerunitedcbus.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.